Support for WUWM podcasts comes from University School of Milwaukee, fulfilling a values-based mission of developing learners, fostering leaders, and preparing citizens for pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. More information at usm.org/mission.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Excurette Nunez. Today, we'll explore why lease agreements are allowing closed-down Walgreens stores in Milwaukee to sit vacant. Then, we'll learn about Milwaukee's last socialist mayor, Frank Zeidler, and the impact he had on the city.
He, like Hone, like Zeidler, certainly governed idealistically as someone who believed very much in socialist ideology. But, like his predecessors, he had to run a city.
Plus, we'll learn about Brillantes, a soccer club for young Latinas.
Of course, I like to say that she's, developed better because of her opportunities with us. But for her, I feel like it's a change of mindset, a change of confidence, and a change in self-esteem.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Excurette Nunez. Thanks for joining us today. Recent reporting from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel looked into Walgreens leases throughout the city. The reporting found that the leases contain terms that restrict pharmacies and other businesses from moving into the stores, even if it's closed down. And those leases can last for decades, as long as the company continues to pay rent. One of the closed-down Walgreens locations has a lease that was signed in 2009 and lasts until 2084, preventing new business from moving in. WUWM's race and ethnicity reporter, Taryn Powell, is joined by Chad Venn, a real estate expert, to learn more about these types of leases and their provisions.
I'll just give you kind of a general overview on how a lot of commercial leases work. And they're much different than a multifamily or residential lease that you would see in an apartment. A lot of that language is governed by state statutes, and landlords have a very strict guidelines that they have to follow to make sure that everything is legally in compliance. When you're talking about commercial leases, and that's, agreements that are in place between people who own buildings like office buildings, retail shopping centers, industrial buildings. The terms of those leases are much more negotiable. And obviously there's some legal standards that they have to follow, but they're governed a lot more by the business terms that the building owner and the tenant negotiate and come to terms with. When you talk about tenants like Walgreens, these are major, large corporate organizations. And a lot of times they operate with somewhat of a standard lease template that they start the negotiations with. And so a lot of the clauses that you see contained within these Walgreens leases, even though that there are negotiations that are going to change them site to site, many of the key provisions that are in them are just part of their standard lease that they agree to. And one of the questions I think that you had was about this idea of the exclusive use. And while it might be kind of an odd concept to, consumers in neighborhoods or people unfamiliar with this, it's actually very common in these retail leases, especially when you're dealing with these larger corporate users like a Walgreens or a CVS or a lot of grocery stores. And the intent behind the exclusive use clause is to basically protect the business from competition coming into a center. And so when these agreements are put in place, I'll use an example of like a coffee shop. If you are an operator of a coffee shop, whether that's Starbucks or even a small neighborhood coffee shop, you want some protections from the landlord being able to put a competitor in, on the same building in the same shopping center as you do, because it's going to impact your sales. And so these exclusive use clauses are in there to really guard against the tenant's business. And in the case of Walgreens, there's the discussion about the pharmacy and the other restrictions that are able to happen within that center. And so I think the intent when they're signing these leases is to really kind of protect against a landlord having the ability to put competitors in a same site, a same center to impede on their business. So in addition to the exclusive use, which kind of protects the tenant and gives them the sole right to operate that type of business in a shopping center. There's also things like the prohibited use that you see in a lot of commercial leases can call out specific things that tenants and future tenants don't have the ability to do within a center. And so sometimes those are written in there for the benefit of the landlord. And sometimes in the case of these larger corporate users, they're also put in place to kind of protect the building or the business that's operating within that building. And so a lot of these restrictions are things that either the building owner or large corporate tenants look at as a way to protect against reputation of the building, synergies of the building. And so a lot of these larger corporations, they have an image and a brand that they're trying to convey, and they want to make sure that if they're going to commit to a long-term lease in a place, that the landlord doesn't just have the ability to put any type of operation they want in a shopping center that they might view as an impact to their brand reputation or to the use that they're looking to operate. What makes these Walgreens leases so complicated is that they're so long. And so many of the base leases that you see for a store like Walgreens start at something like 25 years on average. And so 25 years is a long time. And as the economy changes, as consumer behavior changes, it's really hard to see how some of these clauses are going to play out years down the road, decades down the road. In addition to the long term that they have of these leases, many of them also have renewal clauses in there, which allow the tenant the ability to continue their lease on, usually for 5-year additional terms. And so when you look at the article in JS Online, it's referencing, I think 75 to 80 years. Well, what that's taking into consideration is the original 25 years of that lease, plus these additional renewal options that get put on the end of the lease term. And from the business's standpoint, they like those renewal options because if they're going to invest in a community, invest in a center, they want to make sure that they have the ability to maintain control of that space for a long period of time. And these leases that you see with the Walgreenses of the world are much longer than we see with a lot of traditional retailers in space, but the general terms are pretty common in the industry.
It's interesting to have these long kind of terms with just uncertainty of whether you will return. I guess that's what's kind of tripping me up a little bit.
What's hard for people that live in any community is that a lot of times these agreements happen between a user and an owner of a building. And, when they're usually on the front end of it, it's with the best intent, right? When Walgreens signs this lease, when the landlord agrees to this lease, it's to provide long-term services for these communities. So they lock in these long-term leases, I don't believe, to control and monopolize an area as much as they just want to ensure that they have control to run the business. Mm-hmm. Now, over multiple decades, as I mentioned, consumer behavior changes. And so you're seeing a lot of these stores now closing that I don't believe it was the initial intent to let's just open a bunch of stores, see what works, and then close down the ones that don't. Mm-hmm. I think it's done with the intent of we want to be here long term. Now, if you live in one of those communities, you're just kind of subject to this agreement that you had no control over, nothing to do with. Right. And it could have a big impact on the neighborhood. I think what's kind of important to know, and this is it's kind of confusing in itself as well, but the tenant is technically in a valid lease for many of these situations. And so as long as they're paying rent, the original lease is still there. And certain leases have clauses in them. Like, for example, there's a clause called, a dark store or a dark closure, where if a landlord has a concern that this could happen, they have the ability to write that into a lease, that a tenant doesn't have the ability to just close a store down and stop operating in it without the lease becoming invalid. Mm-hmm. And that's the landlord's way of protecting the integrity of their center, the other tenants that are in the center. Because if you bring in a large operator like a grocery store or a pharmacy, that draws a lot of other businesses to the area. And those other businesses are there because they know the foot traffic and the pedestrians that are being brought in because of that user. And so they want to make sure that if they're going to commit to a lease that is outside of their control, that the large big box tenant that's kind of anchoring that center doesn't have the ability to just turn the lights off, walk away, stop operating, but still remain under a valid lease. That's one of those points that's negotiated, however. So if you're a landlord and you're dealing with a large credit tenant like a Walgreens, you might not have that ability to negotiate that into a lease because, frankly, some of these tenants are very desirable for owners. And so they will concede on things for these larger operators than they would, like a smaller neighborhood startup company.
Very, very fascinating.
It's a unique place to be in for these centers because and I'm speaking in generalities here. I'm not saying that this is across the board, but there could very well be a dark store with nobody operating, with no intent to move back. But as long as the tenant is still paying rent on that space, they remain a valid tenant under the terms of that lease. And with that valid lease stays those inclusive use clauses, those prohibited use clauses they remain in effect. Now, some of these leases will also have things like sublease clauses in there, which gives the tenant the ability to try to locate another tenant to take over their lease. On occasion, there's conversations where landlords kind of recognize what's happening and they can try to negotiate to get out of that lease. But everything requires approval on both ends because the lease is the lease and it's the letter of the law until somebody is in default. And as long as they continue to pay and they're operating under the terms of their lease, there's really limited legal action that could be taken.
I'm glad you said that because I had a question about whether, it even makes sense to take legal action in these cases. Are you aware of any other, if it's elsewhere, if it's Milwaukee area, if there have been any, legal challenges or, pushback to situations like this?
Sure. There's been challenges to these in areas like San Francisco, New York, bigger cities that, what they're trying to implement, and I don't have all the specifics to this, but I know that certain municipalities are trying to add a vacancy tax would be a way of looking at it. So if you're going to just own a property and not have anything operating in there, you still have the legal ability to do so, but they're going to try to charge you some sort of a tax or a fee to try to encourage landlords and tenants to renegotiate these terms to get out of it because nobody wants to see an empty storefront. The building owner doesn't, other tenants don't want, neighbors don't want it, cities don't want it. So there are a lot of areas where people are trying to work on ways that, they can work around it. But legally, as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of anything here locally that has been successful or anything that's even been discussed that could kind of operate along those same terms.
So I guess my final question, can you speak to the barriers this creates for those? I said, earlier, it's predominantly been Black and brown communities where these Walgreens have closed. And with these exclusions, certain industries cannot open up because of these, term agreements. Can you just speak to the barriers that this might create for those communities?
Yeah, it creates a very challenging situation, no doubt. You have what were kind of center points of many communities. Walgreens was kind of notorious for getting the best locations in each area. And it's got to be very challenging for people who live in those communities who have these prime centers that don't have an operating service providing those needs anymore. And it create some legal challenges because, as I stated, these leases don't really have a way to unwind them without people agreeing to do so. And if there were another operator or another user that would be willing to step in to that space, in many cases, it's going to require Walgreens or the tenant in this case to sign off on it, and then the owner to sign off on it as well. And if Walgreens is in place with a really strong lease, it's going to require probably somebody at that level to step in to take over the lease for everyone to be able to agree to it. And so it's got to be very frustrating for people in the communities that have relied on these services that don't have that asset anymore that they can rely on. And it doesn't have a really easy answer to it. And if you're people who live in areas where this is affected by you, I do imagine it puts a lot of extra stress and strain on trying to have to find ways to kind of relocate those services that are there. From a real estate perspective, it is challenging though. And I think if there was an easy answer, people would be able to try to figure out ways to solve it. The hope would be that another operator sees promise in a neighborhood or a community and sees the value in it and wants to be able to approach either the owner or the tenant to take over and run their business there.
Chad Venn is the director of the real estate program with UW-Milwaukee's Lubar School of Business. He spoke with WUWM's race and ethnicity reporter, Taryn Powell. Do you need some flexibility for when you listen to Lake Effect? You can listen to us on demand. Find Lake Effect as a podcast wherever you like to listen, download it, and enjoy it on the go. In about 20 minutes, we'll meet the women behind Brillantes, a soccer club for young Latinas. But first, we'll learn about the last socialist to hold the mayor's office in Milwaukee and the impact he had on the city. That's coming up on Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Excurret Nunez. Milwaukee is known for its deep ties to socialism. It was the first city to elect a socialist mayor, and it was the first place to elect a socialist to Congress. Last week, we learned about the many accomplishments of Mayor Daniel Hone. This week, Lake Effect's Joy Powers explores the tenure of Milwaukee's last socialist mayor, Frank Zeidler, and what socialism looks like in the city today.
It's 1948, by the time Milwaukee elects its third socialist mayor, and the city was a very different place than it had been just a few decades earlier. Frank Zeidler had joined the Socialist Party as a young man at the height of the Great Depression, but the party had changed a lot over the last decade, as historian Ames McGinnis explains.
The Socialist Party as it existed in 1948 was kind of just barely hanging on. And the group of young people, relatively young people, like Zeidler himself, who were at the center of it, were actually relatively newcomers to the party, trying to reinvent it for a different historical moment.
The Social Democrats had lost many of their most fervent leaders to death or defection, and the city was undergoing a massive transformation. The end of World War II marked a new era in America, and Milwaukee was no exception. The metropolitan area was quickly expanding, but the city's aging infrastructure was struggling to keep up. To get elected as mayor, Zeidler would need far more support than the socialists could provide. Historian John Gerda explains.
By that time, there was no longer a socialist organization that could do the bundle brigade of the literature drops. In 48 hours, they could blanket the city, with periodicals in any language that was desired. So he ran with the Municipal Enterprise Committee and pretty much a volunteer-led, people on the left wing, idealists, good government types. So it was kind of a ragtag campaign, but he was someone who was carrying on quite visibly and openly the legacy of the socialists, that had done such good things for Milwaukee over the years.
Frank Zeidler was following in the footsteps of his brother Carl, who had previously unseated the city's longest-serving socialist mayor, Daniel Hone. Carl, a conservative, served 2 years as mayor before going overseas to fight in World War II, where he was killed at sea. When Frank Zeidler was elected mayor in 1948, some questioned whether he was elected on the strength of his argument or the strength of his family name. But regardless of how he'd gotten there, Mayor Zeidler had big plans for his time in office.
He, like Hone, like Seidel, certainly governed idealistically and someone who believed very much in socialist ideology. But like his predecessors, he had to run a city. He had to deal with very practical kinds of concerns. And two of those were very important for Frank Zeidler, where you have 15 years of depression and war. The streets had gone to pot. The infrastructure had suffered because there was no money during the Depression and no will during the war because everything was diverted to the war effort. So he had to do a very concerted campaign of rebuilding of the infrastructure. And the city's responsible for a lot, bridges and buildings and streets. So that was a large part of what he had to do.
Like Seidel and Hone before him, Zeidler was also very focused on housing for the average Milwaukeean. By 1948, the nation was facing a severe housing shortage. It had started decades earlier, but the end of the war and the beginning of the baby boom turned the shortage into a crisis. Here's history teacher John Deisinger.
Zeidler is always really worried. He has this sort of concern, which was very common among urbanists of the mid-20th century. He's terrified of the specter of the slum, of the overcrowded, dangerous, dirty city, and he's really worried that Milwaukee is growing too fast for its boundaries.
At the same time, the areas around the city were quickly being filled by new developments and the expansion of the suburbs. Zeidler saw this as a direct threat to the health of Milwaukee, and he didn't hide his disdain for the suburbs.
He does not like the suburbs. He famously says, we consult with the suburban governments, but we do not believe they have reason for existing. He sees the suburbs as basically a way for the privileged to freeload on Milwaukee, to basically work in the city or own business in the city and then go home to their little borough in Cudahy or Wauwatosa or Whitefish Bay and not pay any taxes. And so he embarks on that process of annexation, of literally expanding Milwaukee's boundaries into surrounding areas.
Under the Zeidler administration, the city had a massive campaign of expansion and began annexing large parts of the surrounding area, as John Gerda describes.
Milwaukee was pretty much landlocked in those years, and Frank Zeidler, with his field marshal, a guy named Art Werba, annexed land aggressively. Milwaukee doubled its land area during the Zeidler administration, basically from 50 to 100 square miles.
The annexation campaign was important for two main reasons. It gave Milwaukee new space to build homes for its growing population. It also served a practical financial function to help ease the burden on Milwaukeeans, who were paying to rebuild the city's aging infrastructure.
What that did was it created tax base inside what might have been suburban. And Milwaukee and Brown Deer fought like crazy. And Milwaukee won that war in the Supreme Court. So Brown Deer became a village of its own, but it would have had the whole northwest side that became Milwaukee's. And what that meant was you have a place for Milwaukee to grow and a place for Milwaukee to develop tax base that helped to ease the burden on the older part of town that was in more serious need of repair and reinvestment.
The expansion included the town of Granville to the north and town of Lake to the south, and other border areas on all sides of the city. Although Zeidler was unable to stop the expansion of the suburbs, he was able to nearly double the size of the city at a time when Milwaukee's population was changing.
The last one to incorporate was 1957. That was Greenfield, and that was the last link in the Iron Ring. Since then, Milwaukee's had piecemeal annexations that pretty much locked Milwaukee into its present dimensions.
Like previous socialist mayors, Zeidler was focused on building more public housing. And like previous mayors, he faced an uphill battle. Here's Ames McGinnis.
Although he made some important kind of first steps in that direction, many of his efforts were thwarted by a very intense and coordinated campaign led by enemies of public housing, including people in the real estate industry, private corporations, right-wing voters and political leaders in Milwaukee's suburbs. And This happens in the context of struggles not just over housing, but also over race in the city.
Zeidler was an advocate of integrated public housing, which in the 1950s put him at odds with large swaths of Milwaukee's white community. The Great Migration had come to the city as many Southern Black Americans looked for new horizons after World War II.
Frank Zeidler and other advocates of public housing are accused of building public housing as a way of recruiting Black people to move to Milwaukee and then vote for Zeidler and his allies. These racist campaigns are really ugly and produce a lot of scars across the urban landscape and the metropolitan landscape that in different ways I think are still with us today.
During his time in office, Zeidler had advocated for public housing in Black neighborhoods and created a Human Rights Commission, which put him in the crosshairs of the burgeoning civil rights struggle that would dominate political life in the city a decade later. Zeidler's politics also put him in the crosshairs of the anti-communist fervor that had proliferated in the U.S., thanks in part to another Wisconsin politician, Senator Joseph McCarthy. The communist accusations were baseless.
There was a real contradiction there that Zeidler and even his opponents, I think, recognized, which was that Frank Zeidler was never a communist. In fact, he was a stalwart anti-communist. Socialists by the 1950s were very anti-authoritarian, pro-democracy, and hugely critical of the Soviet Union. So you can imagine then how maddening this would be for Zeidler to find himself being accused of being a communist or even a Stalinist, when that's antithetical to the very essence of how he sees socialism.
By Zeidler's third campaign for re-election, the attacks had taken their toll. In 1960, he decided to retire. Ironically, one of Zeidler's biggest accomplishments in office would end up decimating some of the Black neighborhoods he had been accused of favoring. Here's John Gerda.
He was also an early proponent of freeways back in the days when they were not controversial. There was so much gridlock back in those years that anything that would keep you from having to wait through 6 stoplights to get across Wisconsin Avenue was greeted with a lot of enthusiasm.
Black neighborhoods like Bronzeville were carved up to make way for the highways, destroying homes and businesses alike. The planning and construction had started during the Zeidler administration, although the depth of the destruction wouldn't be realized for decades. Zeidler may have left office in 1960, but he didn't leave his civic life behind him.
He spent 46 years not being mayor, and I think during that time established himself as kind of the model of what a citizen should be. It's just generous with his time, always curious, always taking a part in discussions, and kind of staying in the game in so many important ways.
Zeidler remained a committed socialist through the rest of his life, helping reform the Social Democratic Party into the Socialist Party of the United States of America in 1973. But his work expanded far beyond politics. Here's Ames McGinnis.
If you look at Frank Zeidler's resume at the end of his life, it's just extraordinary. The number of different organizations and clubs that he's not only a part of, but he's showing up and helping to lead. Just an incredibly inspiring figure.
Today, a new breed of socialists have been making waves in the U.S., led by the Democratic Socialists of America, or DSA. It's an organization that promotes socialist policies, but it's not a traditional political party like the Social Democrats were. Instead, most prominent DSA elected officials are Democrats, like New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani or U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In 2020, DSA member Ryan Clancy became the first socialist elected to the Milwaukee County Board since 1956. Today, he represents Wisconsin's 19th Assembly District. While the DSA has some core differences from the Social Democrats before them, Representative Clancy says they share some core values.
We are focused on, pragmatic issues, but also towards larger goals. So, we're all in favor of a public option, for example, for health insurance. But we all realize that the best solution here is universal single-payer healthcare at the national level. We're all in favor of the right to counsel, which I passed at the county level, which provides attorneys to folks facing eviction. But ultimately, we know that the bigger solution is social and cooperative housing. So we are both pragmatic, but also we have our sights on that larger kind of institutional change as well.
History teacher John Deisinger is also a member of the DSA. He sees a lot of commonality between now and the time period where the Social Democrats rose to power.
The socialists rose out of what is sometimes called the Gilded Age, where the United States was seeing enormous wealth inequality, more and more of the nation's wealth congregating in the private fortunes of men like Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Morgan. So too today, we see more and more wealth being accumulated in the private fortunes of people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. Wealth inequality is at its highest point in terms of percentage of wealth held by the very top fraction of a percent in this country. It's at its highest point since the Gilded Age.
After the McCarthy era, the rise and fall of the Soviet Union, and decades of anti-communist sentiments being conflated with socialist ideals, politicians like Representative Ryan Clancy are redefining what their party means for the public.
We are forging what socialism is, and we are taking that definition out of the hands of Fox News. And it's great, and it's a long process. I think, the rise of socialism in the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, was not an immediate overnight thing. It was a slog. They went up gradually, and we're going up much quicker.
The legacy of the Milwaukee Socialists lives on in the city through its parks, its water, and the very land it sits on. But the future of socialism in the city is yet to be seen. Today, Frank Zeidler is considered Milwaukee's last socialist mayor, but he may not be for long.
That was Lake Effect's Joy Powers with the final part of our series on the Milwaukee Socialists. At WUWM.com, you can find the first 3 parts of the series and see examples of early socialist publications and posters. Still to come, we'll learn about a soccer club that's giving opportunities to young Latinas in Milwaukee.
So I started playing rec soccer, and it was a team with all boys and with 2 girls. And when you play with boys, sometimes they won't pass you the ball, you won't get as much time. It's you're just there. It just wasn't good. I wasn't good, I wasn't getting minutes, I feel like I wasn't getting any better.
That's next on Lake Effect, on Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Excurret Nunez. If you wanted to sign your kids up for youth sports, would you know where to start, or even what the cost might be? Brillantes is a soccer club on Milwaukee's South Side. It's relatively new, but the club provides coaching and mentorship for young Latinas interested in the world's game. WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez brings us the story of Brillantes and the impact the organization is having on kids and families alike. That was WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez reporting. You heard from Ariana Sanchez, Carolina Lomeli, and KB Bayo.
This is the sound of $1 million turf field and stadium. In late May, with perfect weekend weather, it's serving as a soccer field for over 50 young Latinas.
How's it going?
Great. Yeah. Well, we're losing a little bit, but it's really fun.
This is Ariana, or Ari Sanchez. She's 15, and she is going hard out here. We're at Carroll College in Waukesha, about 20 miles from Milwaukee, where most of these girls are from. It's their first time playing on this field, first time with these coaches, most who have played college ball.
Hi, my name is Carolina Lomeli. I brought my 2 daughters, Ariana Sanchez and Allison Sanchez.
Carolina, who never expected to be a mom, but was always a soccer player, just smiles, taking it all in. Because girls haven't always had opportunities like this.
The feelings are just incredible. I can't believe they're playing the sport that I loved but just seeing them, I want to tear up sometimes. I want to cry. That's what I love.
Legacy Sports is hosting this one-day skills camp, but the girls from Milwaukee are coming from a different place, Brillantes, a soccer community on the south side. And all of this, the field, the coaching, the slick jerseys the girls are wearing, it was all free. KB Payo is one of the co-founders.
If Legacy hadn't stepped up and said, hey, we'll do this for you, how much would something like this cost? The group and each person, each kid?
Usually for something like this, each kid is probably $150 to $250.
Just for the day?
Just for the day, yeah, this kind of experience. So to bring it at no cost and just have it purely be just come enjoy. Parents don't have to worry about anything, just come enjoy is really awesome.
Brillantes has only been around for 18 months, but their impact is huge. Maybe even life-changing for some of the girls. While there are other soccer programs around Milwaukee, even a few in the central city, Brillantes serves girls exclusively. Girls that want to play, like Ari Sanchez.
Of course, I'd like to say that she's, developed better because of her opportunities with us. But for her, I feel like it's a change of mindset, a change of confidence, and a change in self-esteem.
KB says they tailor experiences for each kid, which has helped someone like Ari bloom from maybe a little awkward to less so.
She's one of my most obnoxious kids, in a good way, where she's she talks back a lot more, which is not a bad thing. So she's just more owning her space and owning the team that she's on every time I'm around her. So I've loved to see that transformation.
For a girl, owning your own space isn't easy in youth soccer. They might get coached differently than boys. They might not get past the ball playing co-ed, so they might not develop as players. And here, with Brillantes, everything is no to low cost, which might be the biggest barrier when it comes to youth sports.
It's really a pay-to-play model, especially in a sport like soccer that hasn't been around super long in the United States, hasn't been ingrained in quote-unquote American culture for a really long time. And so if you have money and resources, transportation, etc., you can play and have anything open to you, but the kids that don't have that can't access soccer in that way.
KB's kids haven't had that access, and it's not just youth sports working against young Latinas.
To me, they are the most marginalized athlete that we have in this country. When we're talking about language barriers, socioeconomic status, and then also both internal and external culture against them.
If you're a girl growing up in a Latino household, you might not be encouraged to play youth sports like your brothers. When KB started coaching girls soccer in a different league, they saw that gap in development up close when playing all-white teams from around Milwaukee suburbs.
So we had our first game, and I could just see, the girls on the other side of the field compared to my girls, were like machines already. And I'm like, how are you even this good at 8, 9 years old? It pissed us off that it was still happening to girls. And like I said, I wasn't there to just spend some afternoons doing whatever. I was there to make a difference. And for me, that was the opportunity to make a difference, is to do something about this opportunity gap that exists before the girls are even on the field.
Enter Brillantes. KB grew up with an older sister and 4 brothers. And being stuck in the middle of those siblings, the big question was always, can you hang in sports? Growing up in a basketball family, naturally that was KB's first love.
I was at every one of my brother's games, not because I had to be, because I wanted to be. I was in the backyard playing with the neighbor boys all day, every day. And then by myself, I was putting in a couple hours a day, as a 5-year-old. I just was a fanatic. But yeah, I never was put into sports because at that time, my mom didn't realize that your daughters could be athletes, right?
A few years later, KB found soccer and quickly learned all about that opportunity gap. There was this one weekend, KB was in middle school at one of their soccer games, and on the field right next to them, there was this team playing in super cool jerseys, fresh gear, they were getting coached hard, and they were winning. It was called club soccer. Today, around Milwaukee, youth club soccer, teams that travel, have paid coaching, that sweet gear, can range anywhere from $500 to thousands and thousands of dollars per kid. With Brillantes, KB made it a point that money wouldn't be a barrier for kids improving.
There's a group of 4 high school girls that I met last summer, and I saw some talent in them and some grit, and after talking to them, realized that they had never been on a club team before. And I was like, how are you 17 years old and like this decent at soccer and like you've never played on an organized club team before?
Turns out the kids dreamed of playing club, but 2 of them were going to be seniors.
So this was actually like the last year of their life that they'd be able to play youth club soccer. And so I was like, no, we got to get you guys into something. After these girls did their first tournament with their club team, afterwards, like they were texting me like, thank you so much for this opportunity. Like I never thought I could be a player at this level. Like I never thought I'd have an experience like this. Like my confidence has like risen so much. Like getting that feedback from them was a huge moment for me.
I feel like an earnest text from a teenager is like the most special thing anyone can get in this world.
No, like it's tough. And so like to receive that in like a small wave, like it was incredible.
So that's how I sound?
Wait, I want to hear.
Oh, so we don't sound that bad.
Wait. Oh my God.
Pull it out of the way.
Oh.
Carolina Lomeli, from the beginning of the story, sees a lot of similarities with KB. She also grew up loving the game, even if the game didn't love her back.
I was raised in a farm back in Jalisco, Mexico. There's a soccer field right in front of that, my house, my parents' house. So it was very hard not for me to like it, even though the name calling, it was horrible. I think my dad, he knew that I was talented, but I think that it hurt him when he would hear people talking. But that didn't stop me.
As a mom, she didn't want to push Ari to play, but she did want to make sure that she had the opportunity to if she wanted it.
To me, soccer, it never really caught my eye. Like, I knew my mom played, but it wasn't like, oh my God, like I really want to go play. No, it was never that.
Right after COVID, Carolina pushed Ari to get out of the house, move her body. And soccer still meant the world to Carolina.
So I started playing rec soccer, and it was a team with all boys and with like 2 girls, which is where I met my best friend. And when you play with boys, sometimes they won't pass you the ball. You won't get as much time. It's like you're just there. It just wasn't good. Like I wasn't good. I wasn't getting minutes. I feel like I wasn't getting any better.
But there was something there. Carolina signed her up for club ball, then her high school team. But where things changed for Ari and her relationship to the game was joining Brillantes and all of that hard work that KB's done for the girls. Even just that field, you said it was hot, but even just to like be on that
they
field.
They told him
like,
how much
oof.
it was per hour. Ari, did he told you? Like $400, a couple $100 per hour.
Yeah.
Which one?
Carol, the turf.
They were paying for it?
Well, he got the hookup, the legacy guy.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah,
so they don't know those
to.
things. And that's sometimes what, it's sad to me because I'm like, guys, there's a lot of hard work happening behind the scenes. What she's doing for the community, it's just amazing.
Ari has since gone to ID camps, which gets young players in front of coaches and scouts. She's visited D1 colleges, talked with some of the players on the team. And later this month, a group of Brillantes girls are playing in a big soccer tournament in Chicago.
All these opportunities that KB has like gotten us, they really are like amazing because I don't think if I like had joined like Brillantes, I don't think I would have gotten like these opportunities for free.
You might have picked up by now that ball is life for mother and daughter, which means a lot of tough coaching for mom. At the camp on that $1 million field, every time I talked with Carolina, she brought up Ari's play, even if I didn't ask about it. And after every game, she'll let Ari know how she did. Tell me like a average game, not a good game or a bad game, but what does the talk sound like?
Like why you didn't look at me when I told you to keep running. Why are you giving up so fast? Why you're not fighting for every ball? Why you have not implemented the guidance I provided to you last game? Where my talk's going? But I always wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts when I'm here talking for a couple minutes about the game, and I know you don't want me to talk to you about it. I just want to see what you think.
I feel like maybe sometimes...
Just say it.
Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe that I should have done something better. I feel like everything that I do, I take it negatively. Like, I can never think on the positive side. And when coaches, like, tell me things, I'm like, oh, like, you're good, like, you're talented. I'm like, are they just saying this because, like, they feel bad? Like, do I really have something?
Growing up playing youth sports, you might find dads that coach their boys hard. I've seen teammates break down on the field after hearing from their dad. I've seen dads run onto fields and courts mid-game. And that's a lot to unpack, but what is clear is that it says something that a mom can really coach her daughter. It says something about that opportunity gap and how it might be slowly closing.
My mom, she will talk her head off about what I did wrong, what I did right, all the way home. And it's funny because, like, everyone's like, really? Like, your mom? And I'm like, yeah, my mom. Like, she's the one who played soccer. Like, she's in love with it. So if she's going to say what I did wrong, what I did right, like, she's not going to lie to my face and say I had a good game. Like, she's going to tell me what I did wrong, what I did right, and just give me that constructive feedback.
Another part of Brillantes, and a big part of this community, was to create an inclusive space for Latinas and Latino families. Ari grew up in a majority white setting, playing on majority white teams. Brillantes has given her soccer, sure, but also a connection to her culture.
So when I joined, I was like kind of happy that it was like with people that I could probably bond with a little more, a little easier, people that I could relate to. With the things that like go on in the world, sometimes you may hear like a little racism in like certain places, and it gets like all up in your head and stuff like that. So being in a space with like girls that really are like you, it's amazing. It really is like beautiful to see like all these girls together.
The people they're taking in, sometimes they're not criminals. That's the sad part. I'm not saying that I'm against that, but if they're criminals, yeah, they have to pay for what they did, right? If they're not, they're here just working, taking their kids to school, taking their kids to play a sport. I don't think that there's nothing wrong with that, right? I do think that we should be all feeling safe playing the sport we loved. But I know there's a lot of families out there they're not, and that makes me really sad.
Back at the skills camp, Carolina is talking with one of Legacy's coaches and co-founders. They're the ones hosting the event. She wants to know what the coach sees in Ari's game.
The girls that are high level, they want more. They demand more, so you have to give them more.
This is Derek Marie.
Even when I was doing this with the older girls over there, I'm coaching them the same way I coach my guys, because they can handle it. And you know what? Women listen better. They can take it.
That's awesome to hear. Oh, what we're going to take. I'm learning a lot as well, just from listening to you.
Derek has coached college, club, and high school ball for over 10 years. And while all of this, a day camp for 50-plus kids, might bring in over $10,000, it was an easy call to give it away and support the work KB is doing.
We are kids of immigrants, right? So, like, without somebody at some point or people giving us an opportunity, we aren't where we're at. So KB was like, what's the catch? I'm like, literally, we make enough money doing other things. What's important to us is we give it back.
Derek's dad immigrated from the island of Dominica in the West Indies, first going to New York before joining the Navy and then serving in Vietnam.
When he was leaving Vietnam, his bunkmate, they were about to leave. My dad had no home here. He was just here, right? He was just a foreign land to him, and he said, asked his bunkmate, where are you going? He said, I'm going to go home. And the guy's like, well, where's home? He's like, well, I'm from Marshfield, Wisconsin.
Derek's dad takes along, finds a woman, and eventually settles down in Stevens Point. All of this is a full circle moment for Derek and his partners at Legacy, closing that gap.
How often do you see an all-girls, all-minority camp at a turf field and there's no ask? Never, bro. Never.
On the other side of the field, Ari's in a dribbling drill. She's smiling, playing loose, having fun. I've only seen this side of her, but Carolina tells me that this atmosphere is different, and it brings out a different side of her daughter.
And let me tell you, just with Brillantes, she's a different person. She feels more comfortable. She feels at home, and I think what KB provides to them, it's that safe environment when she gets to be herself. And I'm like, you're not that shy as you used to be, huh? She's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, I like that.
Ari looks tired from the last drill, breathing heavily, but still ready. She's been one of the stars of the day, something she's heard from everyone, the coaches, other players, even her mom.
Yeah, how was that?
Very tiring. I kind of fell like a couple times.
You were going at it, though.
Yeah, it's just I'm not used to playing on turf.
So that was a fun drill. Do you know what comes next?
No, actually, I don't. They haven't said anything.
Okay. But I'm sure you're ready for it.
No, yeah. That's what I came here to do.
Let's go.
That's Lake Effect for today. I'm Excurette Nunez. Audrey Nowakowski, Joy Powers, and Sam Woods join me in producing Lake Effect each week, with help from Graham Thomas. Becky Mortensen is our executive producer, and Emily Files helps edit the show. We also heard from Taryn Powell, Jimmy Gutierrez, Mayan Silver, and Susan Bentz from the WUWM news team this week. Jason Reevy is our studio engineer, Valeria Navarro Villegas is our digital operations manager, and Trevor Shep wrote our theme music. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. And if you want to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Monday at noon when we'll speak with one of the pioneers of Juneteenth to learn how the Milwaukee celebration got started and some of her fondest memories of the day. Thanks so much for joining us today on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.